Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo. Tonight, we're talking about protect versus supporting our culture and what that looks like between the sexes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo, the life relationship coach and podcaster. Tonight, we're talking about protecting versus supporting the culture, how to protect Black men and women during the 21st century. I have a special guest with me here tonight, Mr. Jason Phillips. We're going to go back and forth about this topic tonight. But Mr. Phillips is a therapist. We've been talking about doing this for about almost 6 months, and we're finally here. So I'm going to let Mr. Phillips introduce himself, talk a little about yourself, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Wow. Corey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, man.
Man, so one, thank you for having me on the show, and that is an amazing production. I meant to tell you that earlier, but yeah, man, I really like that.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it's been 6 months since we've been going back and forth, but we are here. I'll introduce myself. I'm Jason Phillips. I'm a licensed therapist, confidence coach. I specialize in self-love and anxiety, and I'm just happy to be here and engage in this conversation.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things that we were trying to go back and forth on what we really wanted to do.
Right.
We had some stuff going on. COVID kind of hit us pretty hard, and but I'm glad here just to talk as Black men and men of color to talk about this important topic. And so tonight we're going to talk about protecting versus supporting the culture. I know you had a lot of good things to talk about off the camera. With professional and personal life. And those are the two things that we always struggle with. But we're going to talk about mentorship first. So the mentorship piece, and we also talking about switching that on and off and what that looks like. So let's go straight into the mentorship piece of it. And so the question for the night is, do you believe that mentorship supports us? Men and women when it comes to your professional life. Can you talk a little bit about that in your professional life? Do you think having a mentor in your professional life really helps us as people?
So one, Corey, great question. I think from my standpoint, having a mentor has helped me tremendously.
Right.
So, and when it comes to men and women, how they've helped my career, my trajectory,
right.
Most definitely. I remember my
that we can't hear you.
The mute button on. I don't know what.
Oh, we're good now.
Okay. So I was working in community mental health, and I remember even during the right after my interview,
right,
there was a Black lady who worked at the front desk, admin, and she said, "Look, you got this." And then when I did get the job, she gave me a lot of pointers because I was a new therapist. She said, "Look, do this, don't do that. When your clients come in, if they're, more flirtatious, make sure you check them on that. If like just little things that really helped me professionally."
Right.
And then there was another Black male therapist in the office with me. She said, "Look, you need to connect with him." And I was like, I was like 25, 26 at the time. This brother, he was in his 40s, maybe even early 50s.
Right.
But that connection has been a lifelong mentorship that's really helped propel my career. So when you talk about mentorship, I'm a huge supporter of, because without it, we can't prosper and we can't really have the right trajectory in the workplace.
Yeah, I really believe that. And but I've always believed in mentorship. I remember I'll tell anybody this story. When I was 14, 15, I was a part of, back in the day, I would say that the 90s, we had a lot of it was, you know, heavily on male programs. It
Right.
shifted. It shifted over the last, I would say, 15 years, a solid 10 years with heavily on women's growth. But when we were growing up, they had a lot of male opportunities, boy opportunities. And so I remember sitting down and having those conversations with those men, and how that really shaped my mind when I went into um, working as well as professional. And I wasn't afraid to then ask other men that look like me for help and support. And believe it or not, some of those guys actually are still my mentors to this day. So to your point, you know, I really believe it's one of those things that you need, if you want to be something, like you said earlier, it's best to have somebody who's already been in those shoes to not make those same mistakes. Talk a little bit about this 21st century and where we live right now. Do you think that the lack of mentorship in a professional setting is there? Do you still think it's around? You know,
So Corey, it's funny that you mentioned like in the 90s.
We missed you again on muting.
Let me switch my mic out.
Okay, all right.
Okay, cool. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember growing up, you know, in my teens and early 20s, they did have a lot of programs for Black men and men in general. Whereas now it seems like everything is, I won't say everything, but a lot of programs are geared towards women.
Right.
And for us, it's more of a struggle. Like, you know, we just, even when it comes to loans and programs for entrepreneurship, a lot of it is focused on our Black women.
Right.
Which I'm in support of, but I also think that, you know, we lack the productions and the programming for Black men.
What are some of the things that you feel like? Do you feel like the younger generation is thinks the way we think when it comes to that? And if they don't, do you feel like they're missing out on those opportunities that we got, or we were able to be more receptive of those professional mentors? You mentioned something earlier, like, but I've heard as of the last couple of years, some people don't believe in that. Some people don't believe in the having mentors at their job.
You know, I hear more often than not now, I hear people say it's hard to find a mentor. They don't know what that looks like. So, and then our younger generation now, I don't know if they're as receptive. Like me, I was hungry for a mentor. I remember when I had my first barber that I stuck with for years, when it was time to get a job, I said, look, man, I need some extra cash. Can you plug me with somebody? And he hooked me up with somebody to have, my first income at that time. Now, I don't think our generation is as open to mentorship for a number of reasons. I don't think they see the benefit like you and I do or did, and how that can help us grow, not just from a professional standpoint, but mentorship alone can help you with things you're going through personally. Like when I spoke about one of my mentors, he sat me down and talked to me about life. Like, even though he was a therapist, he said, look, I'm married. I think he had been married 20 years or something at the time. And I was engaged. So he just started giving me information about marriage. And he said, I know you didn't ask me this. But I'm going to tell you. I'm like, okay, well, let me take notes. I mean, it was unsolicited, but it was definitely warranted and needed.
Right.
And now I don't think our brothers really know the value of having somebody who's already been there, who's made the mistakes, who's gone through the bumps and bruises, and they can help pad us and pad them so they don't have to make the same mistakes.
Right. Do you believe that it's just, what do you think did it? Why do you feel like they don't feel like they need our support or our guidance? Because we're at the age now that we should be passing this on to the young brothers, and so a lot of them maybe not be as receptive. I personally believe when we grew up, there was a certain level of respect we had for men.
Yeah,
there was a certain level of honor. Just being a man, if I'm 20 and a guy was 45, I sat down and I listened because it was a level of respect. Do you feel like it's the respect thing, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's a little bit of respect, but I think it's also just societal. I think the way society is set up now, I mean, even when you look at music, back
Right.
then you had music, you had rap groups, you had singing groups. So you had keyword as groups, you had people coming together.
Right.
Now everybody's doing their own solo thing, which
Mm-hmm.
is cool, but then where do we come together as a community
Mm-hmm.
and have collective conversations about how we can help one another? Whereas right now with the solo thing, it's like,
Right.
okay, what are you doing? What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like what you created right here with this space is what are we doing as brothers?
And I think, like, to your point, I think it's the independence. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm hearing you say. Every get your own, get your bag, and but I've been lucky enough to travel, and I've seen the importance of family and togetherness. And just like they were able to help me, I feel like it's my job to pay it forward to somebody else. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's something that we need to do as our generation grows, and we've seen it, to bring that back within our communities. When we see a young brother and sit down with him, I try to do that when I talk to some guys, maybe
Mm-hmm.
10 years, 15 years younger than me, and just let them know, even if they don't take the advice,
Right.
it's still I feel like it's still up to me to put the information out there, and if they're receptive to it, come back. But like you mentioned earlier, that independence thing is definitely one of those things that we haven't, as a group, as Black people, as of a culture, we're getting, in society, we're getting away from that. Do
Yeah.
you feel like we've gone too far? Do you feel like we can bring that back?
I think we can bring it back. It starts with these type of conversations, and then
Mm-hmm.
the listeners who see this and hear this, they're going to see us on this platform
Right.
having a dialogue about, okay, how do we support each other? How do we protect each other, men and women? And just today alone, I was able to have 2 conversations with 2 other Black men, one who helped me in my
Mm-hmm.
professional career,
Right.
secure different positions and income, and then the other Black man was somebody who was like 10 years younger than me, and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to help him. So he
Mm-hmm.
was calling to thank me. So I was lucky, like on this day today, I've had conversations with 2 people, whereas one has helped pull me up, and then the other I've helped pull him up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
as long as all he does is continues that same trajectory, that
Right.
lineage of helping the next brother,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then we'll be able to get back on the right path. I think with these spaces and podcasts like yours, like mine, we're going to be able to do it, but it is that whole, each one reach one.
Right. Right. And I actually talked to one of my mentors yesterday, and I was giving him praise and thanking him at the time when he was there for me, and even the jewels he hit me with at the
Mm-hmm.
time, it didn't help. It didn't really. It helped me in a way in which I explained to him, and I couldn't even find the words to describe what he did for me in that moment, and he then told me how important it was for him to help me. And so
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I believe that, even though you may feel like you're the one that's receiving the information, or getting the jewels from the person who's seasoned, that person too is receiving something. And
It's
so,
reciprocal.
it's reciprocal. And so I think that, if we can get the young brothers, and to continue to be open to these type of conversations with guys like us and people who are older, who've been in those shoes, I think we can continue to move forward, because it's so important. I feel like it's so many people out there, and it saves so much time for us too.
Right.
Let's go into the personal. So,
Okay.
same question: do you believe that that mentorship protects us, men and women, in the personal? When we talk about personal, I mean relationships and life goals. Where have you seen that?
So on this side, I've seen it go the other way where,
Okay.
especially, I'll start with the women first.
Right.
I've seen where it seems to be that women aren't having as much mentorship and protection around
Mm-hmm.
amongst themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear this from my clients, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just speaking from personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
where they feel like they're just flapping in the wind.
Mm.
And what that leads to, you have relationship problems, you have issues you struggle with on the job, things that you go through personally, but you don't have anybody to actually come out and talk to about it. You just feel like you're out there on an island. You know, that's how our women feel. And then it spills over to when they're dating somebody like myself or you know, because now their view is skewed. So if we have brothers pouring to us and say, hey, you know, you need to expect this, you need to hold the door, you need to do these things. But if our women aren't getting that same support, then they're just flying aimlessly.
Why do you feel like not getting that support? I remember my sister's years older than me, and I remember sitting and being younger and not really listening, but also listening and hearing my mom have those conversations with her about men, about, hey, if you don't do this, then this. And I think that we got some of that, but I think around the time we were growing up, or even now, you know, me dating, I hear a lot of women, they may be hearing it from their girlfriends, but they don't have the women around, older women, to talk to them. And if they do, they're not talking to them about how to get in that relationship. Or maybe the breakdown of the family is the fact that they told them to get the independence. They didn't tell them to have us or to bring us closer. And there are two different messages that's been told. And what's your take on that?
So I think that it comes from a lot of different ways. I think one, if you think about the term, you know, talk to the OGs, which is what we did. You know, if you want to be married, if you want to make a lot of money, whatever you do, we sought out people who were older, wiser, and had already done it.
Right.
So when I think about the best marriage advice that I received, it was from older men who were already married for, you know, for a little bit of time. 5 years, could be 20 years, but they had already been there. When it comes to women, I don't feel like they always have that space where they can reach back and talk to whoever it may be, mentor, auntie, mother. They end up talking amongst themselves, sharing their own personal stories. But then, you know, there's personal biases too when you do that.
Right.
So if somebody has not had a successful relationship, and then they're trying to tell you how you should handle your relationship, they're coming at it from a very skewed angle.
And you know what? I will say this, even if the dads that we grew up with, I didn't grow up with my dad completely in my life. But I grew up with parents that always did not speak badly about each other.
Right.
You know, and I think that sometimes, you know, maybe women are not hearing the positive or not being truthful about certain things. And I'm not saying that my dad said, but he would always talk about, hey, I should have did this. I should have did this better for your mom, or, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda. And I took that as, hey, let me be better in my situations. Let me be a better person. How do I go about taking his wrongs and him being, and not saying exactly what the wrongs, you know, were, but also understanding he's coming from a place of vulnerability and knowing like he didn't do everything right. Okay, so let me take that, and what can I do to be a better man and to be a better man in a relationship? What about you? What did you hear?
So I can relate to. I didn't grow up with my father in my life in full totality, but I also didn't have my mother really bashing my father either, which was key. I had grandparents who were married; they had their own struggles, but so I still had a good foundation of Black love. But I think even more important than that, I had people not necessarily saying, "Hey, you don't want to do this or you don't want to do that." Like the image at, what am I trying to say? Basically, the lasting points and values that my mom and grandparents instilled in me, and even my father, were still uplifting because I had a huge impact on how do I view myself and what I want for the rest of my life. So the stuff that you didn't do, or the stuff that she didn't do, the stuff that y'all weren't able to do together. I'm older now, so I can go back and look and see what did happen, what didn't happen. But as we're growing up, I think parents, mothers, fathers, all of them have to be careful of how they speak about their, you know, their mate and the father or the mother of their child, because you're planting little seeds on that person.
Absolutely.
And then that's how they end up thinking about that person and their future partners.
Right.
And as you know, you're gonna get older, you're gonna be an adult where you can look back and say, oh, mom didn't do this, oh, dad
Right.
did that was wrong. But you don't have to tell a little 5-year-old or an
Right.
8-year-old or a 13-year-old all the you don't spill the beans with them, because they're still in that molding stage. They're still developing, and they
Right.
hold on to every little thing you say as gospel, because they're still trying to figure out that identity. So when you talk about protecting Black men and women, that protecting, it has to start from a very early age.
Do you, before we move on to the mentorship piece, we were talking offline about, do you feel that we don't protect women, or do you feel like women do get protected?
So yeah, I think this is
Or do you
probably
feel
where
like it's the support?
we had some difference. I feel like we don't protect our women enough.
Okay.
And this is where I think you hear it a lot in social media, like protect Black women, because they're not feeling protected.
Okay. And my take on it is supporting is, I look at it more of, it's not my responsibility to protect somebody if they're an adult, because they have to own their own stuff. Because at the end of the day, I can support you with it, but protecting you from it, I feel like that's not holding a level of accountability. Whereas Black men, for whatever reason, we're always having to be accountable for our actions. You see it in society all the time. If I've gotten in trouble before, I literally went to a game a couple of years ago with my cousin, and the little boy and the little girl were playing at an NBA basketball game.
Okay.
And they had a game going, and then the kid had to shoot those in a small basket, right? And the boy went, and he made the best shot.
Right.
The girl didn't. Right? The girl didn't, but she was cuter.
Right.
Everybody, it's like, who won? And we're like, clearly it was the boy.
Right.
But because they're 5 years old, neither one of us are so innocent, because the girl cried or said, oh, they gave the award to the girl. And so it's a societal thing too. And the boy was confused to know, like, wait a minute, I scored this basket. I know I won, but the girl got the prize.
So he's baffled.
But that's similar to how society is. Would you not say so?
Oh man, you got using real life examples.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like protecting in that scenario, for one, with kids, I thought it was a great analogy to just explain what I was saying. But I would have never done it that way. Everybody would have got something, right? Because they're too young. But in society, with the way we live, I have to own up to who I am.
Yeah.
Now, as another human being coming into my life, we're talking about relationships and life goals, I will support the person in whatever it is they have going on. But if I protect them and they're not my wife, now I think for you it's different because you're married. So you have a whole wife to protect.
Yeah.
I get that. That's different. But in the dating stages, in your professional life, I it's not that I won't protect a woman if somebody was trying to harm her.
Right.
But I'm talking about as a general protect and keeping her from not being accountable for her own actions. So what do you have
I think there's a thin line, what I'm hearing you say, Corey, too. There's a thin line between protection and accountability. Like how do we still hold this person accountable and protect them at the same time?
Absolutely.
And I think even, myself, I've probably struggled with that at times.
Okay.
Just being, super honest and transparent, because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. I guess that's the best way to put it. So you end up protecting them from hurt, which now has led over to protecting them from being accountable.
There you go. I mean, that's what it is. And I think we don't want to lose that sense of protection. We don't. Nor do we want to lose the sense of protecting our women, but I feel like the shift has to come back to protecting men too. Because
And
at
I
one
think
point in time, I'm sorry to cut you
go
off.
ahead.
At one point in time, I think women used to, they held us accountable, but they also looked at us differently. And because our fathers may not have done the best job, but I don't give anybody a pass. You know, our parents did the best they could do with what they had, and I think that's what we got. And so I always look at it from that standpoint, in the sense of, hey, my dad did stuff wrong, my mom did stuff wrong. Nobody's perfect. However, we should take the good in which they presented to us and use it to try to make sure that we do a better job with this next generation. Because if we don't, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's where we all have to kind of come together and start. If as women want us to protect them, support us in protecting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So
that's how we can.
I wanted
That's
to
how we
touch
can
on that
all
before we
win.
went on to the next one. I
Yeah.
want so the next topic, we talked about mentorship and what that looked like with personal professional, but with personal professional, with our turning it off in the professional setting. I know you talked a lot about the professional setting and switching that off when you get to work. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So and I was speaking specifically because I work with so many
Right.
women
Mm-hmm.
who are in high power positions, or they're bosses at work. They handling a lot of things at work. I think, society as a whole, we see our women starting more businesses. They're in more supervisory or supervisor positions. So now they're the leader. They are the boss in the workplace. And to come back home and not be the boss, I think that's hard for them to always turn off, because they're used to being the go-getters, the decision makers, and even in a lot of cases, the breadwinners. So we have to now ask our women to adjust from being that go-to person at work and take more of a, I don't want to say a back seat, but just not be the point or the lead on every single thing in the household. And I think that's where I see a lot of us struggling with, because it's like, hey, I'm getting stuff done at work. I'm bringing home most of the bacon, or I'm making all of the decisions. And now I have to kind of take a backseat to you. And there's a trust factor where they're
Mhm.
not sure if they can trust their partner to always lead, because they're used to leading and they're used to the independency.
And we've heard that a lot. I mean, I've definitely seen that. So what kind of advice do you give them?
So one, I always tell women, like, hey, if don't feel like you have to um, be everything in all places. So just because you're killing it at work, you're killing it in school,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to let the man lead or take on more of the front row when it comes to some things at home. I also will say this: not saying that men are just gonna dominate. However, it's okay to hold that person, your partner, accountable. So if there's certain things that you want, certain things that you expect, have a conversation about it. Don't feel like you have to, you know, lower your standards because
Mm-hmm.
the man won't meet your standard. And
Right.
I think that's where a lot of women think. They think, oh, because I'm not meeting people who are in my caliber, or who can,
Mm.
match my energy or my
Right.
expectations. Like, hold on, are you giving them a chance to
Mm-hmm.
meet your expectations? Are you being really descriptive about what your standards and your values are? Or are you just assuming and you writing brothers off before you really give them a chance?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I always say, once you cross that threshold or the door, then that you got to leave that at work.
Yeah.
You have to be a wife, a partner, girlfriend, whatever that might be. And I understand that you have to turn that. How do you go about turning it off? I know it. I hear it. It's hard. What are some of the things that other people are saying? And how do you feel like brothers deal with it as well?
Yeah, I think, brothers, because we used to just, again, making decisions too. We used to
Mm-hmm.
being the point person and say, hey, do this, do that. and not always being as communicative about what we need at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the
Right.
core,
Absolutely.
all of this starts with the conversation.
Right.
What are my roles at the house compared to what my roles are at work? And we both need to have a better understanding of what each other's day-to-day life looks like.
Right.
Because I may know, my wife goes to work and comes home, but I don't know all of what that entails. She knows I go to work and I come home. She may not know how many decisions I'm making or how I'm playing the back seat to somebody else. And I really don't like that, but I know that's my role at work.
Right.
So we have to be more transparent, which means that we have to be vulnerable, which can be scary.
Right.
But it's necessary to build a really cohesive relationship with your partner. And then when it comes to turning that switch on and off, it won't be so hard like a hard switch or a hard on. It's more like, oh, I can relax. I can do this, and now my mate knows what I'm doing, and I can meet his or her expectations,
right,
and not feel like I'm having to dumb myself down or take a lesser role.
Do you feel like women have to dumb themselves down if they have to do that when they come home?
I don't personally feel like they are. I think that sometimes they may think that they are because, again, they're used to making so many decisions or being in a position where they're just pulled on so much, no matter what the field is. So now they're not used to having somebody say, look, I got this, because they don't trust that person really has it.
Right.
And I'm gonna say one more thing.
That goes into your protection. Now that's going to more to my next question is protecting versus supporting. How do we as men support? And you touched on it, communication. Is there anything that you would say that we need to do as men to support our women with that? With that balance?
Be open to change. Be open to not doing things like, my household may look different than your household. So one thing we can get caught up in is running the same play. Oh, this is how my father did it, or this is how my grandfather did it. So this is how it's going. But see, now we're in 2021, almost 2022. So things that worked in the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s is different. We have different type of lifestyles and structures. So as men, we have to be open to change, which also means sometimes we got to get our hands dirty. Wife may say, look, I need a little bit more help with this.
Right.
I'm putting in longer hours or I'm studying more. Okay. Is this the norm or is this going to be just for a time period?
Right.
But I need to know. And I also need to know at the very core, I think you mentioned this earlier, but for men, it's very important that the respect is there.
That's true. Definitely with the communication. If a man doesn't feel like he's respected in his own household, and I don't like to bring up the past. Well, that's not true. I like to bring up the past to a certain degree. However, especially because I feel like a lot of women want somebody similar to their fathers, even though that father may not at least the good thing that was in their life that their father did for them. However, it's important for us to have that respect. Now, as men holding us accountable, we have to be able to show that we can protect women. We have to be able to show we can lead to build that trust. But I think that goes both ways, and both people have to be accountable. And so, to your point about respect, men absolutely have to feel like they're respected. It's all about the tone, how you're talking to him. You can't bring the same tank, and I've seen a lot of feminine women at work still be in power. They don't have to have the masculine energy, so that they can, demand that. But and a lot of times, I'm just gonna be honest with you. For me, this personally, I believe women are strong anyway.
Oh yeah.
Any woman that has to, I think women as a species, if they have to give birth to a child, we would crumble if that was us. We get a cold and it's we're in the corner somewhere.
Right.
So I say that because they don't have to be that masculine. They could be the feminine woman and come in and do that. But I think that we've gotten a bad rap overall as men as not being great protectors. whatever that looks like in your own home. And we have to do a better job of that. But I still will not take that away from women, because you also have to pick that protector.
Yeah. And also, we have to identify what the protection means and be open to the protection, because that varies from person to person to person. And if you just going off of these blanket definitions, you're going to feel like, well, I thought I was doing a good job protecting. I didn't know you wanted me to open every single door. I was just opening up the house door. I didn't know you want the car door, so that's where, as much as I know men, we get a bad rap for not communicating. But I would say women have to express what they need, and be more kind of straight to the point too, more descriptive.
Now, do you feel like, again, the threshold, what does that look like professionally, if you've ever seen it before, with the turning it on and off? Or I'm sorry, before we go there, do you feel, we talked about a protection and what that looks like. What about supporting them? Do you feel like to support them through something like turning that switch off, what does that look like?
That looks like giving security. Okay. That's what that looks like. Women, a lot of times, they want to be feeling like they can let their hair down. They don't have to juggle everything. They want to make sure that we as men have it. So if we can provide that security and that reassurance, sometimes it's not just the security, because you may be going to work or you may be coming home every day. You may be doing these things, but then they need that extra level of reassurance. Like now you have to say, look, I got you. Even though your actions are already saying you got them. But
you got to reassure.
That level of reassurance looks like, oh, okay, you really do got me, huh? Because now your actions and your words are lining right up together.
Now, our men listeners and viewers are going to say, what are they getting? What are they going to get in return? Just like when you said protection, you demanded that respect, right, from women. If we're going to support women in that and reassure them, I always say it's the same thing. It's not called reassurance for men. It's called stroking our egos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got to stroke men's ego because we too, I say we have emotions. We're not emotional, but we have emotions, and those are feelings that we have. And so many years we are told to just not express those feelings, but our reactions oftentimes is because of our emotions. So what does that look like for supporting a woman and getting that support from a man? What do you feel like we should be receiving after that reassurance?
Well, I mean, you hit it on the head, though. I mean, if you stroke the man's ego the right way consistently, he's not going anywhere but to work at home or whatever you say, because now he feels like he's taken care of. Right. And that's where I've seen the ball get dropped, where the ego is not stroked. Right. The respect is not given. And this doesn't cost anything. We're not talking about buying you a car, getting you all these gifts. We're talking about just some actions and some the way you communicate. That right there is priceless for a man.
But Jason, you know all of what we're talking about, even with our experience working with people. That is easier said than done. I hear it all the time. And this is not, I don't think we're talking like rocket science here. We're just talking about being vulnerable. But that is probably the hardest thing, to those egos, that pride. And if men have to do it, I don't want to let women off the hook and say, hey, they're responsible for that as well. And if they're able to do it, if they really want a healthy situation, I believe that they can get anything from a man, but you have to stroke the ego. You have to be respectful. And again, if they haven't seen that growing up, going back to our original point, how do they learn how to do it now?
So but it's not like you said, it's not rocket science. And I learned this from just working with women in the workplace and having the privilege and honor of managing a lot of women. And then I noticed certain things about certain women who were more respectful, women who were, more respectful, more professional, and just gave me the, I guess it keeps going back to respect.
Yeah.
Like, and it didn't give me like a hard time. I started to look, I'm like, this person is married. This person is married.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
That's what it
and
is.
now this person knows. It was like everybody who knew how to talk to me in a respectful way. Even if we disagree, we could disagree professionally.
Yep.
These were women who had 15, 20, 30 years of marriage under their belt. The women who, and I know we're talking about women right now, but even it happens with men too.
Right.
But so I'll say the men and women where I had a disagreement, or where they did not communicate in a respectful tone, manner, the behaviors were unpleasant. These are people who were not in healthy relationships, or long-term relationships.
I agree. I'll say this all the time. My work wife, she can get a lot from me.
Yep.
Just because we can agree to disagree, and it's never an argument. We don't argue. And even my relationships, Jason, I try to stop saying argue. Also, I always try to say discussion, because I'm not trying to yell. I don't yell.
Right.
I'm a man, so I'm gonna have passion behind my voice. But yelling is not one of the things that I even want to do, especially with somebody you care about. And I think as you mature into a man, you understand that better, and you know how to channel your feelings and be able to say the right things so that you can have healthier conversations. So, to your point, how do we get the people who aren't there? And that's the last thing I want to cover, because I know we're almost out of time.
No, this is good.
How do we get those people there, and to understand, the ego thing is important. Stroking your ego, because at the end of the day, as Black men and men of color, we definitely want to make sure that our women are protected. We definitely want to make sure they're supported. But as men, we want something in return. And as you mentioned before, the respect thing, the ego stroking, I believe that the men who have some sense, they understand that, and they'll give that.
So it's two words for the men, but for the women too. Check yourself.
Yep.
Please, if I can leave it with anything else, check yourself. If you noticing like, man, I'm not really getting along with people at the job. People don't mess with me. They don't go to lunch with me. They don't ask me out after lunch for happy hour. Check yourself. If you find that you are bouncing from relationship to relationship, or you're not making it past the first or second date, check yourself. If you're not moving up in your professional career, check yourself. It starts with the level of accountability, and maybe you've been overprotected before, but these things that Corey and I are talking about, I mean, there's slight tweaks. Being respectful to your mate, being respectful to your colleagues, being respectful to your homeboys or your homegirls. These small things, really, we're talking about attitude and personality.
Yep.
We're not getting into demographics. We're not getting into socioeconomic status. We're talking about attitude and personality. That's what's going to get you the longest way. I mean, it's been an honor talking with you today, Corey, working with Bree behind the scenes.
Right.
But it was the level of professionalism and respect that you all have had throughout the process that was like, man, I can't wait to, to do this and to continue to do this.
Yeah, man, we have another brother that we usually meet and talk and have these conversations. Hopefully we can continue a regular conversation like this. But those people who we are talking about right now need our help, need our support. And you can find me at Tomorrow's Men on all platforms. But going into you, Jason Phillips, thank you so much for having you on tonight. Licensed therapist. You tell us where we can find you.
So you can find me right here on social media at J Phillips MSW. That's JPHILLIPS Sorry, it's getting late. And then you can download my podcast, the Peace and Prosperity Podcast. and I have more information, more conversations with like-minded folks like yourself. And you got some episodes where it's just me giving out information, mental health and wellness tips.
Don't we have another thing for you?
Oh, and
something coming up.
Yeah, so less than 2 weeks, I'm teaming up with Dr. Jack, and we are having a Confidence in the Bedroom webinar.
Okay.
Where that's October 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about what is intimacy, what is confidence, right. How can you be yourself and open your own sexuality, own your own sexuality in the bedroom. So that's a free webinar, October 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Yep, that's going to be dope. That's going to be real, real fun.
Well, you're going to share that with me. I can share it on my platforms. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips. You can find me at tomorrowsmen.com, and we're going to check out.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming onto the show. You can find us at tomorrowsmen.com, on Facebook at Tomorrow's Men, and on Instagram at Tomorrow's Men. Please click and subscribe to the button below. I'm your host, K-Mo. Until we meet again, know we love you, work with us, be with us, and know we're coming from the heart. Peace.